Hello, folks. Welcome to the True Media Roundtable. My name is Chris Jansen, and I'm here with five awesome friends to discuss some subjects relating to truth and freedom and natural law. This week, we're discussing the subject of rights and right action. And so I'm going to hand it off to right below me, Dom, to introduce yourself, and then we'll go around and introduce everybody else who's here with us today for the True Media Roundtable.
Hi, gentlemen. Dom Tremblay from province of Quebec, véritéoconséquences.com. Speaking to French audience, English audience, anyone, I'm really happy to be sitting with these fine gentlemen again to learn and grow and have a good discussion.
Right on. Thanks for coming, Dom. And this week we got
There's
with
a lot to
us.
say about rice. Don't worry. Don't worry.
All right, he's rearing to go. That's good. And we got this week with us Michael Lynn. I haven't met you yet, so please introduce yourself, Michael, and tell us a little bit about you.
Hey everyone, thank you guys for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm friends with Corey. He kind of introduced me to this whole idea of natural law, and I'm trying to work on my relationship with God, like as a Christian, and I find that it has like many like connections to like Christianity and other religions. So like I'm mainly interested in that aspect, but it's always good to learn new things and get different perspective on things. So yeah, pleasure to meet you guys, and it's great to be here.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for coming. Yeah, I think it's good to hear different perspectives, and that's one of the ways the process of discerning truth is. We hear different things and we let them filter through our minds, and we share them with each other, and then find what makes sense in the end and what emerges. Let's go
Absolutely.
to Aaron next.
How's it going, everybody? Aaron Butler. I'm a producer at the One Great Work Network and doing some more work with these gentlemen, doing some fine conversations every week and getting to know everyone and get some more work out there and contribute to the great work.
Awesome. Thanks, Aaron. Corey.
Hey, how's it going? I'm Corey, Corey Angelat. You can look up my content if you'd like. It's Corey dash Nature is the answer, or just Corey Endrulat, Endrulat. Kind of complicated, but Nature's the answer should be good enough to remember. And you might see some of my videos. You might look at a website for a movement based around natural law and a lot of these ideas. So if you want to learn for yourself, you can learn here from these episodes, but you could also get deep dive right into the information yourself. And I encourage you, to do that as a listener. If you haven't heard anything about natural law or rights and you want to reaffirm or take a greater grasp upon this knowledge for yourself. There's many resources that I've collected for people, not only to learn this information, but then how to take that information and put it into action. So I appreciate being here, and I'll share more as we go on.
All right, Corey. Thanks. And the wonderful Will.
What's going on, everybody? Thanks for tuning in. My name's Will Keller. I'm from the Bay Area, California, Northern California. And my website is naturalfreedomleague.com. And we focus on exposing the immorality of government and the belief in authority. And then we talk about the causal factors, the laws of nature, and how to discover objective truth.
And good job they do on that. So yeah, my website's endevil.life, and the idea of end evil is to work on creating a better world, engaging our imagination and working together towards not doing evil things. And on that note, how do we discover what is right is our subject for today. And how do we educate others? What is a right? So let's go in that same order. And I'd like to hear each of your thoughts on what a right is and what is right. Okay, Dom, you started off.
Absolutely no problem with that. Starting is the easiest thing. I don't want to be last, so thank you for putting me first.
That's Will's
but
job.
but where to start? Well, a right start with God. Uh, Michael said it. There's nothing to do with religion, but it has everything to do with God, who is the only one who can decide what a right is and a wrong is, under the principle of mentalism. You know, it's everything is in his mind, and he decides what's wrong, what's right. And when we come on Earth, then we have to live by these rules that we call natural laws, and nothing else. No man's law, no constitution has nothing to do with rights. Even though your rights are written down, maybe in the constitution, doesn't mean that it's the constitution that gives you a right. And it's very important because, when we talk about natural law, we always say, where does it come from? Because if you realize that it comes from God after you know uh, years and years of studying the Hermetic principles, um, then you realize that these are the real principles underlying everything in the universe, including what's right, what's wrong. So we're maybe gonna start with this. Um, you know, So nothing, it's not man-made, it's universal, it's immutable, it's not man-made. So that's all right.
Thanks, Don. Let's go to Michael next.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything Dom just said, and to add on it, a preacher that I watch, he always describes it as like okay, so like we are creators, but like we are not the creator. So like the creator like create us in a certain way, like just like Henry Ford created the car to run on gasoline. Now, say we get the car and like, hey, I don't want to put gasoline in the car. I want to put orange juice in the car. If we put orange juice in the car, it's not going to run very far because we're breaking the law that the creator set forward. So therefore, the creator created us with laws, and that's what like when people are breaking the laws, like that's what leads to like difficulties in their lives. Like not saying that like if people don't break the law, they're not going to have difficulties because we always do have difficulties, but it's just it's all about like preparation in a sense. Kind of got sidetracked there, but yeah, the rights come from the creators, and we don't have like the rights to take the rights away from our fellow man. Like that's not okay. And I believe that people know when they're doing something right and doing something wrong. Like you kind of like get that feeling, and anyone that like says otherwise is I mean, I don't want to call anyone a liar, but certainly not telling the truth here. But yeah, it's about all I gotta say on that.
Ignorant, that's for sure you can't say. Ignorant, you can't. You can. It's still a good thing. You cannot say racist, but you can say ignorant. So
Copy that.
Yeah. All good points. Starting with understanding and learning that these rights and our all the rights that we have actually come from God. It's a lot. It's a good starting place because then it's up to you first off to come into alignment with that, and before you come into alignment with truth and learning or knowing God and forming your own relationship with God, or that creating force of the universe, the thing that put all the laws in place. Like you mentioned the preacher that talked about putting orange juice in the car. I explained it to my sister as in order to fly an airplane, you have to first know what the laws are that will obstruct your flight, and you have to obey them. Francis Bacon said, in order for nature to be commanded, it must first be obeyed. And so that's the first one. We often talk about speaking truth and acting in truth. but I think I said it before. The best way to do it is just focus on what you're doing. That's easiest one probably for most people. Focus on where you're going wrong. Focus on the actions that are not moral, because we all know that's just the thing. I've come into conflict with people. They think that you can't prove natural law with statistics, and I told my brother, go into any, don't really do this obviously, but go into any place in the world and kick someone in the shin or steal something, you're going to get like a 99.999% of whatever, like force to get it back, or like these laws are just, they're innate. You can't go anywhere. Try to do anything bad, go into any society and do something wrong to the people, you're going to get that almost 100% statistically provable, like that's just, it's almost, that's how simple it is. And so yeah, first coming into alignment, and then speaking out when you hear it. That's probably the most common, is just speaking out. I've come from a couple communities that they want to make their dollar, they want to get paid, they don't want to stir anything up, but what this community needs right now, and we're talking about rights, it's like this should just be, like, it's just crazy to me that we're actually still, like, I mean, I had to learn it, I had to go through, I'm still going through my recovery process from all the trauma I've caused to myself and others, and it's like, that's the most, you want to talk about learning who you are and where your rights are, that's the best place to do it. You start with yourself and how you've broken the laws, and the laws should be abided with based on love and through right action instead of fear of punishment, which is, that's people think that's the real world, is just being afraid of police, and it's like, that's not the real world at all. And so yeah, totally with everything you guys are saying, good points. I'll leave it there.
Perfect, right on 3 minutes.
Oh.
All right, Corey, what do you got?
Been on the edge. So let's I'll go back to defining a right. I know, because if I don't, Will probably will. So Will. So
Will.
yeah, he's got a great name for that, Will, which I'll get into. But a right is not a wrong, right? So it sounds like common sense, and I like the fact you guys put it into actual experiments, something that we can observe on a daily basis. I like the fact that Mike went into that, and Aaron added on to that was cool. But that's what it should be, right? Because Aaron mentioned, why don't we know this stuff already? Why don't we know our own rights? If it's part of us and we each have our own natural human rights, well, why don't we know that? So perhaps it is because if we do not know what a right and wrong action is, we do not, let's say, we do not see the evil that is in the world today. We do not see our rights being violated by wrong or violation, violence, any form of theft being taken on our rights. So a right is not a wrong. It's something that does not cause harm. Right. And Chris, I think you hinted to this, how we can understand what a right is by understanding what it is not. This is the process of apophasis, or the apophatic inquiry. And when we understand that a right is not a wrong, and that a wrong is not a right, we say it's objectively as it is, truthful. Well, something that is natural all around us, I would certainly hope that it's truthful. Indeed, it should be. And so our rights come from this truthful, universal source. You can call it God, right? Good, God, devil, evil, whatever you want to refer to it as, the universal energy that is surrounded us, karma, law of attraction, golden rule, all these different forms, through all these different religions, through all these different energy mechanisms, if you will, of people having these belief systems based on the universal law. So those belief systems tend to be faulty, or they're not perfect. Our perceptions have to try to work and align with truth. So we should seek to align our actions with our rights. We want to make sure our actions are right. So we want to make sure our actions don't cause harm. So that way we have the right to take it. We don't have a right to take an action that causes harm, because now we're committing a crime, a natural law transgression. So something that harms or any form of theft upon property. Life is a property, your body's property, freedom, it's your property. So anytime a wrongdoing is made, it's some sort of theft being done on your property. So a right is something you can take that does not violate somebody's property, does not steal from their property, does not harm another person's property. That is what a right is. It is something that is correct, something that is based in truth, and something that is indeed universal, that applies to all of us, because again, like I said, we all have human rights. So we understand what those rights are when we look at those situations, and we can picture a world of two people, as Mark Pasio puts it, because if we're going along the lines of experimentation and realizing what we can see in our own life, picture a world with two people, and if the situation works then and there, then we know if the action is right or wrong to take. Like I said, if you, the listener, want to look more into this, I encourage you to. I do have a page dedicated to natural law, and at the heart of it is morality, which is right and wrong action. Because once we understand that, we understand all of our actions. Natural law is the consequences to our behavior, the consequences to our actions. It's what dictates what will happen to us. So right and wrong has to be at the heart of it. And so distinctively, they can be seen. And so it is through the process of property, harm, wrongdoing, and those transgressions. So statistics not needed for something that could be observed in a day-to-day scenario. Eyes open definitely needs to. Getting past the ignorance, caring to learn more about the world that you live in. When there's simple, observable, experimental, scientific things that can be known, then you do not need complex statistics to prove it. You need to simply open your eyes and get out into the world and see it for yourself. And of course, with all the modern day confusion and all the modern day obstacles, could get in the way. But I digress. Thank you. But yes, common sense, conscience is the ability to understand right from wrong action and what actions to take within our own lives.
Thanks, Corey. Let's go to Will.
Excellent. Yeah, what Corey is describing is objective morality. And why objective morality is important to know is because rights and freedom are synonymous, right? You in order to have freedom, you have to know what actions you can take, what your rights are. And all we have to do is observe what's going on in society and in the world today, and you can understand that we are diving more deeper into slavery. We are at slavery now, and the bondage is, the fist is getting tighter and tighter. And that is because we don't know what freedom is. We don't know what rights are.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to touch on property a little bit. All rights are property rights. Why? Because, for instance, myself, I am spirit, consciousness. This is my avatar. This is my body. I am occupying this body. I am autonomous. I walk on the earth. I'm not directly connected to the earth. I'm independent, right? But still connected with nature. We're endowed with spirit, of course. So to have rights, you have to understand what actions you can take, and that what Corey was saying, apophasis, right? This is, it's affirmation through negation, and a good way to explain this is you can understand what rights are by what wrongdoings are. And if you have, let's say you have a needle in a haystack, it's going to be hard to find the needle, but you could burn the hay, and then what's left is the needle. That's a good analogy that I like to use. So let's do what wrongdoings are, right? There's seven of the basic ones, and then you get into ethics, which is something totally different. We're talking about just wrongdoings, meaning that there's harm caused to a person's property. Murder, which is the taking of life. Rape, which is the taking of free will, sexual consent or association. You have assault, which is the taking of physical well-being. You have theft, which is taking of another's property. You have trespass, which is taking security in a person's living space or domain. coercion, which is the taking of another's free will, and then willfully lying, which is the taking of informed consent. You're withholding information so someone can make an important decision. Um, so those are the wrongdoings. And then what's left? You obviously, looking at the wrongdoings, you can see what rights you can take. There's an unlimited number of rights. But this is extremely important because if we don't know what the rights are, then we're going to lose our rights. And that's what we're seeing today. Freedom is the expression of free will, behavior, and choices. And that's getting hinged. It's getting, we're seeing less of that. And that's because the majority of people don't know their rights. And actually, the majority of people think morality is subjective, meaning it differs for each person. It's what I say it is, and it's all about perception. And this is incorrect. So I'll leave it on that. Great points, guys.
Solid.
Could I mention one more thing? Yeah, that right there is called moral relativism. If anybody wants to, of course, look more deeper into that, which is the idea that morality is subjective and it's just whatever you make of it. And thus, there is no universality to it. There's nothing that we can all bind to. There are essentially no natural laws present by that logic.
Or rights, right?
Yeah. And let's keep in mind that no victim, no crime. There's also something called common law and common law courts where they understand this. And we've gotten, like I said, in the modern world, complex with millions of laws for the nitpicking on the tiniest little things. But there can actually be justification for, dealing situations, of trespass and so forth, in the day-to-day life with common law, natural law, or things that are relatively universal because they are by their blueprint, by their nature, right? So, and they align with nature because they understand it, they learn from it, and that's what I'm hoping what we're all trying to do here.
Well, the tricky part is, this is an interesting kind of deeper thought for people to chew on a little bit, is within freedom is the possibility to do wrong. Freedom contains, this gift we've been giving of this life. You can choose to do something that's wrong. And if you didn't have that choice, then it wouldn't really be freedom. So wrong is contained within freedom, and that's a kind of an interesting thing to chew on a little bit. And then the other aspect of it is it's easy to talk on the surface about rights not being things where we're harming others, but where it gets a little more tricky, and this is the part that I think hopefully people in the audience are still struggling with and learning, is that a lot of the ways that we're governed and a lot of the ways our society runs are definitely wrong, and that's the part that people aren't seeing, because if we all saw that, it would be so simple, like we're describing, like that's wrong. So why are taxes wrong? Why is it wrong to spread a false belief system? There's all these different religions out there that are going to tell you our way is right, and you have the right to do whatever you want. These politicians have their own religion, and they say, oh, we can just say something's right by writing it on this paper, and now it's right. Simple as that. And then, school teachers have reign over these students. They can decide what's right because no one else is around to put them in check. And there's a lot of situations where we're involved in doing things that are definitely wrong in our day-to-day lives.
We're permitting it,
we're
which I think
either
is more
part of it or we're actually doing the action. And there's so much wrong going on that we're up to our ears in it. So let's inform people a little bit from our perspective, personally, some of the things we're going through and realizing that we're doing that have been wrong, and how we can start doing right action instead of being accessories to all the type of things that Will described, all the deadly sins basically. So let's go in the same order, and Dom, start us off. How do we start
Sure.
right action?
Sure. First thing I want to just to complete the loop. I really want to say Corey really on the nail when he said, there's one thing that really struck my mind among the other things, but it's when you said God is both evil and good. You know, and because just to complete what I said in the first round, about God and all God-given rights. God is both good and evil. I'm not talking about just the good God or something. And also, what Will said is very important, and his definition was very on point. And he said it's apart from ethics. And really, this is where the gray zone, we're step into a gray zone. It's easy to define the natural law transgression, what is right, what is wrong, by the apophatic method. So everything that is not a wrongdoing, you can do it. You can do it. You know, uh, the no victim, no crime. uh, as, but there's again a gray zone there where you can put someone in danger, and to what point you can do some reckless driving. You have the right to do it, but are you really gonna push the limit where you can put someone in danger? This is where the ethics come from. There's right and wrong. We can easily define it, but the ethics, where we're in the gray zone where, okay, you can do anything you want. We're in a free society. But you still have responsibilities. You still need to think about others. You can just do anything that's right, and oh, it's my God-given right, I'm gonna just shoot everywhere. Like, it's my right. You can do it, but that's not a bright thing to do. And when you're trying to grow into a society where consciousness and awareness and all these to these principles, and everyone trying to live in alignment with these principles, strive to live such a life. um, so yeah, that's basically, it's really important to take that into consideration, right? That there's a gray zone where it's really easy to define the rights, what is wrong, what is right. But again, Will said it, ethics, it's a really pointy, subject. But I'm gonna leave it there for now.
That's an interesting
Thanks,
point,
guys.
Dom. Yeah, thanks for
All good
popping in with
points.
that. That's something else to think about and add to the conversation. Let's go to Michael next.
Um, yeah, so as far as like I'm sorry, could you repeat the initial question?
Oh yeah, well yeah, because Dom kind of went back and covered what everybody said on, and what I was kind of asking next is, on a more personal level, what actions can you take in your life that are right action, and maybe help define even some of the things in the past you've done that you realize now were wrong, so people can understand what we're talking about.
Okay, thank you. Um, yeah, so I believe that there's like the best version of ourselves that exists somewhere. And like coming again from like a Christian perspective, like when we sin, like that kind of like creates static in between like us and our creator. Now, I know this is like new agey or whatever, but this chart right here, like down here, like the low volume, like that's like low vibrational stuff, like sin, like basically like shame, guilt, apathy, fear. But like once you like forgive yourself and like you start moving higher, like because we're all shitty people, we all did bad things in our lives, and we can hold on to that, and woe is me. Or we can be like, okay, you know what, I messed up in the past, but it's time to pick myself up and keep moving. And once you like keep moving, you get to the higher frequencies, like reason, love, joy, peace, and enlightenment. Now, enlightenment is at the very top, and what I believe that is receiving the Holy Spirit, like as a Christian, because like as people, like we're in these bodies, and like we get spirits, We can get bad spirits that lead us into like sin and temptation, or we can like have the Holy Spirit, which is the Spirit of God. Now, if we have the Holy Spirit, like it's going to give us like that discernment, like that, like, focus on like to do like the right thing, like that knowledge. And that's what I believe like enlightenment would be like in Eastern religions, for example, or like anything where you can reach like a certain point. So like things that I could do um in my own personal life. I, I'm I'm not where I want to be, but that's because of my own actions in the past. Like for example, sometimes like I do things that I know I shouldn't be doing, but it's just like my body wants to do it, and I'm like, okay, I give in. And then once like that occurs, like I feel the static, like because I can feel like that, like losing that connection to the divine. So like, and like once I'm in it, like I just like lay down, like it just gets like piled on as someone was saying, and it's hard to like break out of it. But once you recognize that you're there and you truly want to get out, I believe that God is just one step away, and you just gotta turn back and go to him, and he'll pull us out of it, and just gotta keep the faith and get back on that high like vibrational frequency.
Nice, right on time too. Uh, yeah, totally. You brought up that chart, and it made me think a lot about when you raise that frequency, and when you get up, because most of us, I'm sure, only have certain moments where we actually get that kind of revelation or the experience with God, or like that, experiencing the Holy Spirit for, I've only experienced it a couple of times or whatever. I wasn't raised religious. It wasn't pushed on me. So I ended up I kind of found God by myself. No one really. I always been tried to go to the church groups and all that stuff, and all of that. But I think for me, there's a lot of kind of in the pub. I don't know, a lot of things. In the public, mostly I'm against like all the regular everyday people. I think that's where it's everyday common people that are contributing to this, and we're all pointing the fingers. But in reality, if you stopped and recognized that you're divided with God, you're going, anyone can recognize when something is, I think that anyone can recognize what is immoral. Now, if you've participated in so many destructive or immoral behavior, it chips away at your ability to perform right action and the will to change it. And I think what's cool, since we mentioned Christianity a couple times, is that the resurrection of the Son, and it's symbolic or not, like the resurrection of the Son and being reborn. Every day you can see it in the sunrise, and every day that it's all the curses have been broken. It's like we all often think, oh wait, I've been committing this or doing this for so long I can't change. But no, every day you wake up, you have a choice to just be that much better and be that little bit better. I have addictive tendencies and depressive tendencies, and that's something that I struggle with. And like, just that you're disconnected with yourself. Someone who is addicted to whatever, or not respecting themselves, their heart or their body, being divided within yourself is probably the hardest place to be, and then that creates the division elsewhere. I love the shirt, Will. I love your place, dude. Your little recording area. It's my favorite. But that shirt reminded me of a quote, and it's a quote from the Book of the Law, and it's there's no bond that can unite the divided but love. All else is a curse. And I think there's what I was going to get to is that in the common people, there's not an understanding of the occult or the hidden nature. People are very naive and maybe ignorant when it comes to the forces of the occult and how it has pervaded the earth. You know what I mean? The dark occult specifically. And it's all about subversion, getting them to be like them. And we're not divided. And I think if people had looked into these things a little deeper, like there's just so many people, at least in my past, being part of like working as an EMT, you see people get talked into going to the hospital under threat of the police getting called, but they have the right, like even if you're like, it obviously depends on what's going on. There are certain situations, but you're not allowed to kidnap people. That goes on every day. Nobody cares. Millions of people get kidnapped, just elsewhere. There's 800,000 kids go missing in the United States. We're so ignorant in what we're actually doing. It's like we're just doing it automatons, just like part of it, want to get the paycheck, want to get the money. Everyone's going to get all these stimulus checks now that we have mommy in the house. Everyone's just going to get pacified right into fascism and slavery and more overt slavery. And it's like I have a lot of frustration with just because I've been naive once, but you make a naive mistake with something like human slavery, and there's no going back. Once you see it, once you understand actually that it's all of us, and there's no pointing fingers, and our job is to just get our brothers and our sisters all on the same page. That's a simple task, and I don't know, the hard one for me is just understanding that, because I've been a part of it, but trying to get through to people. There's so many work environments, you can't talk about it. It's like, it's just the most ridiculous thing. No, everyone's afraid to talk about it. They think they're just going to get someone's going to come after them, or something bad's going to happen to it. It's like, dude, get everyone in your work together and tell your boss no. And just say no. Imagine if all the employees in the U.S. just stopped going to the places that they had to wear masks. It's like, that's a simple way. We could solve that really, really quick, but no, it's the small people that are by themselves getting hammered on, the people who actually have a little bit of moral awareness left. Like, I don't know. I don't want to go too crazy, but yeah, like I think the hardest one is, I don't know, it's like beyond education though, because some people you really, really think like, I don't like to say that anyone's a lost cause, but you have to be able to recognize when you're actually doing yourself harm and trying to change certain things, But yes.
Let's go.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Aaron. Great. A lot of good stuff there. Let's move on to Corey next.
Yeah. So, okay. There's quite a bit. I'll just try to not go too much here, but first, just a note on religion. The whole idea of religion, the meaning could be dual here. It could be very constricting on the mind and lead us toward only looking through things in one way, or it could bring people together in another way. So religio or religare, but that those are both in Latin. So, but we have to question here, a lot of people think morals come from religions. And I think that's kind of why we steered into religion as a whole on this subject. But that's not necessarily the case. As Dom has presented when we first started this, you can see it observably in day-to-day life. If you harm somebody, you're likely to receive harm in return. You're not going to want to harm somebody. Right off the bat, you're following a rule of the universe, whether you believe so or not, whether you believe there's morals that are created by religion or not, you're following them still because you want to survive. You want to be a good person to receive good in return, right? So you are following the laws, whether you believe it is all created by religion or not. And to which is the case where we may actually say, we're spiritual beings. Spiritual doesn't have to just include religious. But we are definitely connected to the nature, the whole life source that we are in. And I think that's why a lot of people have this deep, meaningful connection to it, making all these sort of allegories and all these different connections, whatever it may be, to sort of connect themselves with that environment. And they can access that through many different portals, you know, even psychedelics, but many different ways to access that. But on day-to-day knowledge, if we're talking about rights, and I will get to your question, Chris, by the way, but I just want to cover this. Going over the frequencies that Mike mentioned, I kind of want to reflect back to conscience, right? When we decide what is right and wrong action, I mean, what is a right or wrong action to take for a certain situation? We are actively using our conscience. We're using our common sense. And so that is requiring the use of our neocortex, which is this high order thinking, very similar to this high energy vibration, the high chakra, the crown chakra. We're using this neocortex and we're using both sides of our brain to think about the best action we should take among both sides of the brain to create a balance and then thus create a greater action within our lives. And the same thing with right and wrong. It's a balancing scale. That's why the truth goddess has the scale with her, balancing right and wrong. They're both present within natural law, as Chris has said. But our duty is to recognize what is right and wrong so we can, like I said, move in the direction that we want to go and attract the law of attraction. So that could be seen as this enlightenment, is using our higher order thinking that we are born with. So one thing I wanted to mention too, among Dom's point, with the gray areas, right, with the victim and no victim and so forth, is that if you want to really simplify this down, you should not push your beliefs on others. Yes, there's a free world. There is going to be bad behavior that's done. There's always going to be evil. For somebody to think they can just eradicate evil is trying to think that they can perhaps be God and control the events that's happening in the world. But chaos is natural. Chaos is a teacher, as we know. Chaos teaches us what is right and what is wrong, both, so that we know not to hurt ourselves by doing this, and what we know is going to help somebody toward, you know, seeking our love or whatever it may be. We attract it through this. So part of the reason why I also said freedom is what all of us desire. I have a recent podcast, freedom, and we seek freedom in all ways, all of us, everyone. Everything we do is out of a personal need for freedom in some way, even if it's ruling over others for our own personal freedom. People will do that because they see that as their only option out, even though, of course, it's not going to free the whole world. We seek freedom through all different means, and we have to seek that through the heart. The heart knows, the mind thinks. I mentioned that. If you were interested, I have a podcast. That's why I'm not going too far on it. But if we don't push our beliefs onto others, then it's okay. So yes, you can do something. That doesn't mean it's right or it doesn't mean it's wrong. You have to understand that just because you can do something, just because you have the right to do something and you're free to do it, does not mean that it's actually right or wrong in nature. So it's something we have to learn for ourselves. This is a learning process. We don't learn when someone just tells us what to do. We learn when we understand this trial and error, this cause and effect golden rule methodology, which is simply just recognizing the law. And you don't have to say natural law for it to be into effect. So simple
maybe
common
that's part
sense.
of why we're here, is to learn and to go through.
Yes. And to word it in different ways and to help us understand the same concepts, but in different ways. So if this sounds too complex, let's just understand what, for example, Benjamin Franklin said, freedom and security, right? When this is a very core aspect with this scenario, because people, you know, just going along what Dom said, it's important because a lot of people believe this, you know, along the lines of wrongdoing being done in a free world. And they think all the wrongdoing is going to happen. It's just going to be chaos, right? So addressing that to me is very big because it's a big subject that needs to be tackled. And it is best said in that quote, which I think was Benjamin Franklin, but it basically, he says, if you want to pull it up to get exactly what he said, but he says, if you spend freedom for security, you deserve neither and you lose both. basically that's along the lines of what you said. Basically, what that means is that you should not give up your freedom for security. You need to be free, but have responsibility. So now this answers goes into Chris's question. What is it something that I've done wrong in life? What is something that a lot of us have done wrong in our lives? Well, it is understanding that we own ourselves, that we shouldn't just say, oh, well, the government will fix my problems. Oh, well, they'll handle it. I don't need to handle my own life. They'll grow my food. They'll do this. They'll do this. They'll just take over my whole life. It's fine.
Or the police will defend me.
Yes,
The
right.
worst.
But it is your natural right and duty and responsibility to defend yourself by nature. You have this ability to do so. And you have your own property that only you own. And so it is your ownership, your duty to defend it. And that's what we're doing here. We're not introducing anything new into the world and saying this must be cast upon the world. We're simply defending what is here and teaching what that defense mechanism is. So big difference. And that's what creates the difference between freedom and security, and freedom versus government, essentially, is what it is. So we want to do that. And once we understand that responsibility, we realize the wrong we may have done by simply encouraging a group of gang or thugs or people who are just like us to rule over our lives when they have no right to. So we understand where those
That's a big
rights
one.
belong. Yeah, we understand where those rights belong. And this is probably one of the biggest wrongdoings that we could have done in our life, is encouraging folks to take control of our life when they have never had the right to. And it, not to mention, but power
And then
corrupts
going on
naturally.
and acting like that's an okay thing to be doing, you know.
Yes.
So
So
let's
it's moral
jump
culpability.
to let's go to Will next, Corey.
Okay, sure.
Cool. Yeah, a lot of good points. I mean, one of the key things is responsibility. This is why knowing rights and knowing the correct behavior is so important, because as we see what's going on now, the majority of people are actually immoral. And that phrase right there will piss a lot of people off. And that's hard for people to understand. But how many people condone government? How many people support government? See, this is the problem, is that people are dependent on government. They're not taking self-ownership and responsibility for themselves. And this is where the failure comes into play. And this has been bred out of humanity, right? How many people actually know how to grow their own food, or even a group of people grow their own food and provide for themselves? Most people do not, right? Because you have to go to the grocery store, and a lot of people are on, government funds and that kind of stuff, and they put their kids through the government education system. Which, by the way, Corey, you mentioned kids. Kids are inherently thriving for freedom. That's what they do when they're super young. That is bred out of them as soon as they get into the indoctrination camps. So culture is not your friend, and that's something I wanted to point out. But going back to rights, and I'll kind of take the torch, Corey, when you were talking about moral culpability. We need to understand that who's creating the action, who is actually performing the actions. When is it the order giver? Is it the politicians that sit on their so-called throne and say, go bomb this country, go kill these people? Or is it the actual soldiers that are going in, dropping the bombs, killing people? It is the person that's more morally culpable, is the person that performed the action. And this is why people that condone government are actually condoning slavery, because they're taking the action and they're voting. They're the police and military are the goons that enforce the strong arm. They're the strong hand of the government politicians and the bankers and all this shit. So it all comes down to rights, knowing right action and moral behavior. And this is the law of freedom, right? As a society is more moral, that society becomes more free. If a society is more immoral, then that society becomes more enslaved. And this is observable. It's inherent in nature. We can see this. We can use the scientific method and use logic and reason and observe this even through history, that all the patterns are there. So I don't know how I'm doing on time. I'll leave it at that. We'll move on. So
Yes.
Awesome.
One thing I'm kind of reflecting on, I'm kind of thinking back through my life, some of the realizations I made. And so I'll try to express it from my own personal opinion because it's almost easier that way. For me, a big hurdle was Will brought up voting. I had long in my life thought that voting was a fair way to do things. I'd sort of been, indoctrinated to this idea that that's how we make decisions. And it kind of made sense to me for many years, like, oh, everybody votes, and where whoever gets the most votes, then that's what wins out. That makes sense. But coming to a greater understanding of what freedom means and what truth means, and over the years, as I'm looking deeper into things, I'm realizing that no, that's wrong, because what that does is it encourages this groupthink behavior that might makes right, that the most people that are able to have the most aggressive strength and power are able to rule over the other ones. So in other words, you could have a situation where the same people for generations and generations vote, but they always lose because the other majority always wins. So they're constantly never getting their and by being part of a system like that, we're encouraging wrong behavior, that it's okay to rule over other people, and it's okay not to make your own decisions for your own self, your own property. And I had the same thing I went through in my religious experience, because I grew up, heavy into Christianity and going to church every Sunday, and I thought, oh, it's all good, it's all wonderful, this is about being good to each other. But as I grew up, I realized there were a lot of things that have been done throughout history by various religions that are very evil. And part of the way that happens is one person convinces a group of other people, like Dom was talking about, that there's this gray area. And if you're all part of this religion, we all have faith in what we're saying, then you go along with these other things. And then as I get older and start reading books and looking deeper, I realize there's a lot of things, for instance, in the Bible I studied, that I can't really say I know are true. There are stories that I was supposed to accept as being true. And by going along with that and saying, I accept it, I'm just going to have faith that what these people are telling me is true, I was leading myself down a way of being false, because I was taking things to be true that I couldn't know and confirm as being true. And then not only that, but telling other people they should do the same. And that's the same slippery slope that happens in government. Just like a religion, it tries to convince people that the way we're doing things, this voting system, is okay. And it's a subtle lie. And by accepting it and not standing up for individual rights, we're all slipping deeper and deeper into wrongdoing and evil doing. And now the masks is another good example where people are going to justify it and say, oh, this is something good. It's like, again, this subtle gray area that Dom was talking about, where they're trying to convince people, oh, you're helping other people, and that's why it makes it good. And they're like, oh, yeah, and everybody else is doing it. But, ignoring the fact that it's not standing up for individual rights and for each person making up their own decision. So there's an important key there about having our individual choice and maintaining that choice. So, Corey, you got something to say? We're kind of getting to
Yes.
the point where we all have to kind of give short answers and finish up
Yes.
what we want to say. Okay, so
Yes.
Corey, go, and then we'll go to Dom, and each other person can kind of do some
Yes.
finishing comments.
I only see this as necessary because it's a moral obligation to say, but that is the biggest thing that is affecting our rights, is us giving away our responsibilities and making it seem as if these folks we call government, which we can't even identify because it doesn't exist, have the actual right to give us rights when they don't in nature by natural law or by any sense of understanding natural rights and property as we've defined. So that by itself is the greatest of manifestos of not just fear on the face of this earth, which I would hope most people know how dangerous fear is, but slavery because we're giving away our rights. We are no longer human. We're giving our humanity away. We're losing our soul. And that's why we have these soulless people just acting out of orders. I'm just following orders. I'm just following orders. Just following. Do you have any will of conscience within yourself to actually make those decisions for yourself? Did you make those decisions for yourself? Why are you giving it away? What is that going to do if everybody stops thinking for themselves? All of a sudden, now we have people who aren't using their human nature. And then you wonder why we're losing nature, because we're not using our human nature. So we simply have to stand by nature. And as it is the answer to understanding that statism is the greatest threat in the whole world, for what the nature of it is completely replacing nature. By its nature, statism is the most denaturing element that there is, and thus is why it's the most dangerous. It's not statism that's the threat, it's denaturing that is the threat. And denaturing is most affected by this ideology we call statism, which is the belief in authority, that they have the legitimate right to rule over us, and thus they have the moral obligation to rule over us, and we have the moral obligation to obey. Why? Moral obligation. We feel like it is our duty to vote. Our vote is our voice. No, your voice is your voice. So don't get that wrong. Understand your nature and where you come from. Does the government have any place to do with the birth of your child, the birth of you, the birth of life? It doesn't. Has no place. They presume their place. They take their place, and they take it by force of violence.
Great points, Corey. Thank you. Dom, can you give us your closing statements?
Yeah, I'll be brief, but basically, you know, we've seems really easy to define what a right is. Seems really easy to define what a wrong behavior is, what a right behavior is. So then, why do people behave immorally? If it's because they don't know that their immoral behavior is the reason that generates their slavery. They don't know that. They don't realize the connection between their immoral behavior, individual, and the result they see in society, because they don't understand that immoral behaviors are also in the aggregate. You know, you have to watch in the aggregate society also, not just on the individual. You know, I can be a monk, you know, in Tibet, but still I will suffer from bad karma or bad consequences from the aggregate. So it's very important to keep that in mind. I'm just gonna close on that, but you know, very good points, everyone. Thank you again. Very good conversation there. And but don't forget, really the aggregate makes it also hard to differentiate. You know, that's why we don't teach karma right off the bat from on people on the street, because you know we have to go progressively so that they can really understand that their behaviors have consequences. You know, in the aggregate too. They add on to the, if they behave morally, then they add on to the aggregate moral behaviors, and then generates what Will said, you know, the law of morality. So thank you guys. I really appreciate the opportunity again to learn and grow.
Thanks, Dom.
And represent Natural Freedom League.
Love
yeah,
it.
the buildup of evil, it affects everyone. Michael, do you have anything you want to kind of finish up with today?
Yes, sir. Render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God's the things that are God's. We were all created with a divine purpose, and the enemy uses his mechanisms to separate us from that purpose, separating us by race, gender, just all these insignificant differences to divide us for no good reason at all. And it would be nice if we can all see through it, but we're all conditioned not to. We're all conditioned to look at them as the enemy, when we don't realize that we all come from one bloodline. And it's sad, but I'm very thankful to be in the presence of very open-minded individuals such as yourselves, and hopefully together we can help more people open their eyes and wake people up. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Those are wise words.
Thank you, sir.
Aaron.
Not too much to say. We covered a lot. I like what Corey was getting into about government. Obviously, government is like the biggest destruction of freedom, and that's all it exists for. You know, we need to get out of you know, having such a naive belief in the institutions. I always hear people when they talk about the threat of a military, they say, "Oh, the military's got our backs. The military's got our backs." So where were they in all these atrocities that happen on American soil? I mean, it's just daily. It's like the military intelligence, um, the media, medicine, science, technology, all of these things are totally infiltrated. And we have to admit that. We have to come face to face with that and recognize there's a big problem here. Psychopaths hide behind badges. Psychopaths hide in uniforms. I'm not saying they're all psychopaths, but they're on their way and they're contributing to a system that is ultimately enslaving everybody and everyone. By paying our taxes, by allowing police to kidnap people and arrest our children, and allowing, it's all just a big word for slavery and control. It's never been about freedom. We have to understand that. I would just say, it's share the work. If people aren't doing the work and if people aren't actively online trying to present themselves in the media, do the work in the physical domain. Do the work at your job. Do the work or leave your job if it's immoral, but do the work as best you can, whatever you can, and we're going to keep going. But I'll finish it up just by saying, if you're not doing the work, share other people's work. Contribute your time and attention and whatever, some resources to the people doing that work. Support those people. And, it's a hard thing to get up here for most of us. I'm sure we all know, to get up here and take our time and share these things and give references and give ideas and share our heartfelt gnosis, But, just sharing Mark Passio's work, Streetwise Spirituality, Natural Law, Morality and Disclosure, Demystifying the Occult, Part 1 and 2, Cult of Ultimate Evil, New Age Bullshit. Just share those. That's so simple, so epic. I mean, how much easier does it get, all that information in just those seminars? We'd go our whole lives if it wasn't for Passio sharing this stuff. Like, we would have way less pieces. But I mean, yeah, I'll leave it there.
Great, thanks, Aaron.
Mm-hmm.
And Will, you got anything you want to close up with?
Yeah, man. I think it's important to know a couple questions you can ask the viewer. Anyone can ask themselves: is, do you own yourself, or does someone own you? And this is important because you have government, right? Which government doesn't exist. These are just people that are making a claim that they are something, right? And then the majority of people are supporting that claim, and that claim is that they own you. They also claim the land, they claim the air, the water, they're claiming nature, right? This is a completely perverted mentality of a God complex, right? These people think that they are God. So what's right action, and what can we do? If you look at prohibition, it was reinstated by the government because the majority of people said, fuck you, we're going to do this. And the strongest force on the planet, besides nature, is the people themselves. When they come together, that's the strongest force. And even government, which all they do is manipulate and try to control, they said, well, we'll just make we'll make this legal because everyone's doing it anyways, because they can't let go of the control. So my point is, right action is we need to recognize and stop the immoral behavior of condoning government, and which is the condoning slavery. And we need to opt out of these systems. Stop paying taxes. what we're talking about is a level of consciousness, a higher level of consciousness. So you need to understand that you're going to be detoxing from your addiction to culture and what you know of this human experience, right? You're going to have to leave some shit behind. You're going to have to evolve and move on from this materialistic realm. We need to create new systems of agorism, and you use other means of barter and trade and educate our own, and form these communities and say fuck government and fuck these systems because they are immoral, they're illegitimate, and they're evil. It's just the right isn't there, and they're claiming that right on you. So educating yourself is the start, and yeah,
Apology.
for sure, absolutely. That's the part that people have trouble with, saying I was wrong, I was acting immoral. Well, then stop, and then evolve and be and work your way to being moral. And so it's definitely going to be a process, but it starts with awareness. If let's say consciousness is pattern recognition, how are you going to increase your pattern recognition? Well, you need to increase your knowledge of information, and then and apply that to the laws of nature, which is truth, objective truth, and then align your behavior with what you know. So thank you guys. Another excellent conversation.
Thanks, Will. And I guess for me, I would just close up by saying that, I think the biggest thing that popped out for me in this conversation is the individual responsibility aspect to what we're discussing, and that ultimately the solution for you, the listener, is to take that inward journey and recognize that it is up to you to discern what's right and wrong. And just taking something that someone else wrote in a book or that someone else wrote on a piece of paper and claims to be law or claims to be the truth needs to be looked at with a skeptical eye, and needs to be looked at with the heart and your intuition and your own personal experience. And it's not easy in today's world because there is so much evil around us. And one last thing I was going to say on evil, I like to always quote Jeremy Locke's evil is the destruction of freedom. And I also have thought recently that evil is much like a cancer, in that what we're living in, this free reality, is like the body, and evil is like a cancer in that body that is destroying it and taking it over. So it is something that can be rooted out and taken care of and removed from the body. And we could have a body that is whole without experiencing all this evil. Maybe you'd never delete the whole idea of it, but we could live in a society where we don't steal from one another, which is basically not allowing or condoning activities that are stealing, as Will so carefully described. So that's how I would close up. And I want to thank you guys all for coming and sharing your thoughts and your ideas, and I appreciate every one of you. So
Thanks, guys. Pleasure.
Thank you.
As always.
Yes.
Nice to meet you, Michael. Great to have you.
You too. Good to be
All
here,
right,
guys.
guys.
Thank you so much.
We'll do it
Thank
again
you.
in 2 weeks. Everybody have a good night, and we'll see
Sure
you then.
thing, gentlemen.
Right
All
on.
right.
True
Peace.
Media.
Guys.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.